But I kind of just want to show you where we're going to go before we get into the myofascial release. So you'll have your two balls, one on top of the other. We're going to place them relatively next to your frontal hip bone. So if you palpate along the front of your body, you'll feel this kind of bony protrusion, your ASIS. So they're going to be just in front of that. We're slowly going to stay on the floor and work our way to roll them into the back glute region, targeting glute max and the piriformis. So just so you kind of have an idea of where we're going to be going from the front to the lateral to the back of the hip. So go ahead and grab your two balls, and we'll start either on the left side or the right side. I'm going to start on the left side, but feel free to set where you like. I personally just like to set the balls one on top of the other on the floor, and then lower my hip down and kind of place them right next to that frontal hip bone area. And once you have them generally in place, you can stay up on the forearms if that feels really nice. If you want to come all the way down, feel free, but keep in mind we will be moving, so you'll have to come back up onto the forearms in a moment. But let your hips just be heavy and melting into these balls. And then bring some awareness to your breath. Taking a nice deep breath in and letting that go. So again, you have these two myofascial release balls, one on top of the other, placed right on the inside of your frontal hip bone. I'm on the left, and we're slowly going to start to roll to the lateral hip. So to achieve this, go ahead and roll a little bit more onto the left. You're going to kind of frog leg your right leg out towards the side, maybe even use your right hand, and just let the body kind of roll with the balls until you're more on this lateral hip region. And stay here kind of in this half frog variation and let your hips be really heavy. Now the balls may physically roll up or down, so if that happens, feel free just to keep replacing them where we went over in the beginning, just right along that frontal hip bone, eventually the outside of the hip, and eventually the back of the hip into the glute max and the piriformis. So really targeting all of this tissue that supports our hip rotation and movement. We started with that frontal hip region of the ASIS and around there through the iliac. And now we're going to move more into the glute med and min. So again, keep rolling. The balls will stay one stacked on top of the other until you're on the side of the hip. Now, once you're there, it may make more sense to bring your right leg back behind you and extend your left leg, and then let your body be really heavy, resting on these two balls on the side of your hip there. And if it helps, maybe you rock a little forward and back, or maybe if this is a really intense spot, you just stay in stillness and come back to that nice deep breath. Whichever you decide, find something that you can really soften into, nothing that is bringing about any pain, but something that's really encouraging the tissues of the hip to soften and to relax. And then we're just going to roll back maybe a half of an inch, so it's not much. So you're still really on this glute med and min. So we're not on the bullseye of the tush yet. We're right there still on that side of the hip, targeting these lateral and rotator muscles. Again, let the body be really heavy. And take one more deep breath here. And we're going to keep rolling. So again, come back maybe a half of an inch. So again, we're kind of butting up where the glute max and the glute med and min meet. So again, I'm not in the bullseye of my tush just yet, but you're getting closer and closer. So we started in the front and we're just following this line, wrapping around the hip. And every spot you find, come back to that nice, deep, supported breath. And the piriformis is a muscle that can impinge the sciatic nerve. So as we move more back, we're also going to start moving into some nerve flossing eventually. I just want to let you know if it is tender, feel free to back off a little bit. But we're going to keep rolling. So now we'll be more on the glute max region. So you're more towards the back side of your body. And if coming onto the forearms doesn't feel comfortable, you can release the upper body and come to lay down. Your hips will feel a little offset in that one has the two balls underneath of it and the other is on the floor. But again, we really want to target right above the sit bones into this meaty portion of the glute. So feel free to do that on your forearms, or you can always come to lay down on your back if that feels more comfortable for you. You can also bend the knees and find just this gentle windshield wipering of the leg that has the balls under the hip, if the knee can bend. Or again, just stay nice and still and focus on that breath. And then wherever you are, once you have found really close up towards your tailbone, go ahead and take the balls out, set them off to the side, and then come to lay flat onto your back. We're going to move into that nerve flossing to release the sciatica. So the same leg that just had the balls, you're going to bring your knee into your chest, loosely interlace the hands around the back of that hamstring. And as you pull the knee into the chest, flex your foot. So here we're creating slack on one end of the nerve and tension on the opposite end. And we're just going to really encourage this movement between the muscles for this nerve. So as you extend your leg straight, point your toe. And then as you bend your knee, flex the foot. So as you straighten, point, and as you bend, flex. So we're really encouraging this nerve to move freely underneath the glute and the piriformis and around the iliac region. So if we do have hip pain, low back pain, this can be a nice therapeutic thing to do to restore some hydration of blood to this nerve. And we only have to do a couple rounds, so maybe 8 or 10, moving really gently, not looking for a lot of sensation when it comes to nerve flossing. And then release. You can let that leg come off towards the floor and go ahead and wherever you like, we're going to come up and do the other side. So if you want to roll onto your side or if you just want to come up to sit, however makes the most sense for you. I'm going to turn around so I don't have my back to you, but we're going to do that exact same thing on the other side. So again, the balls will be stacked. We'll start at that frontal hip. We're going to move all the way around the side and then land in the back of the hip. So I, again, just like to place the balls on the floor, one on top of the other, and then kind of lay my body onto them. But you can feel free to get into this however makes the most sense for you. But transitioning those balls to the opposite side hip. And again, you can come to lay flat if that feels more comfortable, or you can stay up on the forearms. Keeping in mind, again, we will be moving, so if you come to lay flat, you will have to come back up here in a moment. But just let your hips be really heavy. Feel that balls, or the balls, technically plural, melting into the body as you breathe. As you inhale, there's this gentle pushing away. As you exhale, this sense of softening the tissues around the ball. And take a couple more breaths here. And we're just going to come more to the lateral region. So it can be really helpful just kind of frog leg your opposite leg. So for me, that would be my left leg. And then roll a little bit towards that inner left thigh. So the balls are rolling underneath of you to the side hip. And again, you can come up onto the right forearm. The left hand can be on the floor, on the body, or again, whatever makes most sense for you. But again, let those hips be really heavy. Imagine like your rib cage cascading down towards the floor. And if there's any sharp pain or anything with the balls, we might be on a bone, so you might have to make just a little micro movement to roll off the bone so we're on the soft tissue. And we're slowly going to roll again. So I'm going to encourage you to slide your bottom leg out from underneath of you. Again, the balls may roll out. You may have to physically move them and slowly start to roll onto the side of your hip now. So for me, it makes more sense for me to bring my top leg back behind me and then extend my bottom leg straight. Still resting on that forearm with your chest somewhat open towards the side room of your space, side wall of your space. And this can be an area that's really tender for a lot of us. So as much as you can, soften. Try not to tense. Relax your bottom leg. Try not to flex that foot. But let the body be really relaxed and melting into the blocks. And take another breath here. And we're going to keep rolling. So walk your arms out from underneath of you. Roll back a little bit so you're kind of right up against the glute max. And again, you can come onto both forearms, or if that doesn't feel comfortable, feel free to lay down. Take a couple deep breaths. Really just trying to release all the tissues that connect the hip. And then one more spot, you're going to kind of butt up right against your tailbone region. And then if it feels better, maybe now you come to lay on your back, coming off the forearms. But again, if it feels comfortable on the forearms, feel free to stay there. If you're up on the forearms, you have a little bit more body weight pushing to the balls. So if you lay down, you don't have a lot of sensation. Maybe being a little bit more upright makes more sense for you today in your practice. But once you've made it from the front of the hip to the back of the hip, go ahead and release the balls. You can set them off towards the side. And now we're going to do that nerve flossing for the sciatica nerve on this leg. So bring that knee into the chest, loosely interlace the fingers behind the upper thigh. As you hug the knee into the chest, flex the foot. And then as you lengthen the leg, point the foot. And just keep bending and flexing, lengthening and pointing. And we're just looking for about 8 to 10 reps here. And not a lot of sensation. It's not a nerve stretch by any means. We're really just trying to encourage this nerve to gather in blood, to be hydrated, and to function properly, especially when it gets compressed with all these tight tissues of muscle around it. And just take a couple more here. And then release. But once you lay flat onto the floor, I'm going to invite you to bend your knees, feet onto the floor. And start by just tilting your pelvis up so you feel your low back arch away from the floor. And then tilt the pelvis so you feel your low back compress against the floor. Tilt your pelvis so you feel a nice big arch through the low back. And then tilt it so you feel it flatten. Now the next time you flatten, hold there. And anywhere where you feel this broad space of the low back onto the floor, you can place the balls there. So anywhere in this lumbar region, that might feel really helpful. And that might be different on all of us. Some of us might want to place the balls closer towards the spine. Some of us might like to place the balls a little bit more to the outside of the body. Go ahead and pick up your hips and place the balls in that natural curve of the lumbar. And you may put them somewhere and it doesn't feel quite right. So make adjustments until it feels like something that's giving you positive feedback, something that feels really nice, really nourishing. And once you have that, find this gentle windshield wipering of the knees, side to side. Just really trying to release the low back. Again, this can be really helpful if we have to sit a lot throughout the day. And then if you were still moving, I'm going to invite you to come into stillness. And if it feels good, keep the knees bent, but might be also even more helpful to extend the legs, which just takes a little bit of the body weight off, which can allow this to be more nourishing and hydrating to the tissues. And come back to that nice deep breath. Whether you kept the knees bent or you extended the legs, allow that awareness to come back to the breath. And imagine breathing into the back body where you're connected with these balls. So as you inhale, feel a gentle pushing of the lumbar spine into the balls. And as you exhale, a gentle drawing away as the balls kind of melt into the body. And then we're going to find just one more spot to close our practice with today. So if you extend the legs, go ahead and rebend them. Remove the balls from behind your low back. And you're going to place them just right in the bullseye of your glutes. So right in the bullseye of your butt. And then imagine just kind of like windshield wipering your hips. So the balls are underneath of you providing this movement. So rather than just the knees moving, try to get the whole hip. And depending on how fast you go or the surface you're on, the balls will probably eventually come out the sides. So you may have to replace them after every couple passes. And just releasing through the glute max and this piriformis that runs across it and underneath it and can sometimes compress that sciatic nerve. And again, if the balls keep rolling out, just keep replacing them. And it's like you're wagging your tail or windshield wipering your hips. And then the next time the balls start to slip out to the side, go ahead and just release them, set them off. Roll onto one side of your body and press yourself up. Well, that's it for us today. I hope your low back, hips, SI joint, and piriformis feel a lot better than they did when you first arrived on your mat. Thank you so much for sharing your practice with me today. From my heart to yours, be well.